There we are. We are live. So, hello everyone, and thank you very much for watching the first of our webinar series that we are doing as part of the GEMS webinar series. Sorry, I had the video open and it's looping back in my ear. Thank you, though, for joining. I have two fantastic guests with me today who are also mentors on our GEMS scheme. First off, we have Andrea Short. Andrea, if you'd like to give us a little introduction to who you are and what you do.
My name's Andrea. I am a director at FM Recruitment. FM Recruitment has been around for about 30 years now, and we recruit finance people within the hospitality industry. We've also been longtime supporters of Springboard and through that GEMS. And we also have two other brands that look after operations and executive search. So that's me, really, in a nutshell.
Fantastic, thank you. And then our next guest today is Jessica Berry from the Doyle collection. Jessica, if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us all about you.
Hi, my name is Jess Berry. My job at the Doyle collection is talent manager, which means I have the joy of overseeing recruitment for our 8 hotels. So we have 8 properties. We're an Irish family-owned business with our properties across the UK, home in Ireland, and also in the US. So I have a team that I work alongside to make sure that people, students, the industry know about the Doyle collection as a great place to work and try our best to get the best people in the door.
Fantastic. So if we can kind of kick off, and this webinar really is aimed to help students understand a little bit more about what the industry is like at the moment if they're looking for jobs. But I suppose really what would you say the outlook is kind of for graduates at the moment? What would be your thoughts on that? Andrea, if you want to kick off.
Sorry, what did you say me? Yeah, I mean, it's not great. I think for graduates or for anybody in particular in our industry. But I think, our industry has been one of the oldest in the world. People have been coming and looking for hospitality for a long time, and it will come back, although possibly in a different way. So I think students just have to, keep focused on what they love doing and find, alternative ways to get into work, and just keep trying. It will happen, but it will be a lot slower and it will take a lot longer to reach your star role. But that's for any new graduate, I think.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Andrea on that. And speaking quite frankly, it's not the best time for hospitality. It is going to be really challenging for those that are graduating and looking to start their career in the industry. But as Andrea rightly mentioned, hospitality is incredibly resilient. It will bounce back from this and it will bounce back stronger. And I really have high hopes for the potentially some new opportunities that will arise in hospitality moving forward because of COVID-19. And I think those new opportunities will come about. But it may be that the first role that you get following your graduation is not the role that you thought you'd be doing. You may have to be a little bit more flexible in terms of the jobs that you're applying for, the level of the roles that you're applying for, in order to get to that dream job in maybe 2-3 years down the track, instead of you really wanting to join, the hotel or the restaurant or the contract caterer that you really wanted to straight out of uni.
Definitely, and I know when we talked before, we really said about flexibility, and I think as part of the GEMS scheme, we're encouraging people to be really flexible about their thinking of hospitality, not just that first job, but their overall career. And kind of where you start. I know, Jess, we spoke before about kind of your career and where that's kind of gone. Where you start isn't always kind of where you end up, and you just gaining from that experience.
Definitely. I mean, if you'd said to me when I started in hospitality 13-14 years ago that I'd be looking after recruitment for a group such as this, I would have laughed and said not a chance. I was working operationally. I worked as a barista, as a waiter. I worked in conference and banqueting, and did all those jobs and worked my way up to this. But I never assumed that all of that experience would help me to get my current role, but it has. So I'm very grateful for that. And I worked in the US in 2007, 2008, and during the recession over there, and you know, I just had to be willing to get stuck in whatever job they wanted me to do, because, you know, at the time, conferences were low. I was working in conference and banqueting, and occasionally they weren't functions. So I would be working in the restaurant, or I'd be helping out at reception, you know, on a busy shift and helping people with luggage. So it was just about getting stuck in and doing anything that needed to be done.
I think that's a really good point, actually. I think there will be roles, but the person, the candidate, the graduate has to show that they're willing to open the door, take the luggage, answer the phones, because those are the roles, those are the people hotels, restaurants, whatever, will be looking for going forward, for people who, again, flexible, who are willing to go the extra mile, and they will be rewarded when things change. And in that role, you will find what you like. Maybe you prefer being on the door, maybe you prefer being back of house, and it will also help you find where your passion is. And that's a really good thing about, you know, doing all these different types of positions.
Definitely.
Fantastic. So the kind of key message really is, for job seekers and graduates in particular, you're really going to have to be flexible with what you're doing, and it won't be that kind of maybe ideal dream job that maybe you had kind of when you started university or when you started your course. Obviously, the times have changed and things have changed. Fantastic. So that kind of brings me on to the next key question, I think, and it would be for you two. Obviously, you've got fantastic experience within recruitment and working with graduates and undergraduates, but what really would be your key tips for graduates and undergraduates at the moment?
Sorry, kick it off. I'm people who are passionate about the industry will definitely come across as more not likable candidates, but they will stand out in the crowd. I think by showing not just I've done this degree and now I want to do this job. It's what have you done whilst you were studying? Did you do part-time? Did you intern? Did you volunteer? We want to see that passion. We don't want to be told that you're passionate, and those are things that you can do through your university, through volunteering, through internships. And I know even those are difficult to get at the moment, but they are possible. And that's what we want to see, is somebody going that extra mile to do what they can to get that experience.
Jessica, do you have anything kind of to add to that?
Yeah, I do agree. I think it is really about going that extra mile at the moment. And I think people are realizing that they are needing to. And I think one of the things that's really come out of COVID-19, particularly in the hospitality industry, is the level of innovation that we've seen across the board, whether that's restaurants, bars, hotels. You know, there is innovation at the highest level. And I think with innovation comes opportunity, particularly for those that are just out of university or still studying university as well. There are opportunities for you to jump on board with these new initiatives. But another thing that I think has come out of COVID is the shift to online. In terms of this webinar that we're doing, you know, this is a great initiative, and it's a shame that it's coming about obviously because of the circumstances, but there are plenty of webinars and opportunities, online learning for you to get involved with. So while I'm sure there's the temptation, especially with the sun out at the moment, to perhaps sit back and enjoy and go, you know what, actually it's pretty quiet, I'm going to make the most of it before I start a lengthy career in the industry, but go, actually, where can I learn still? What webinar can I jump on this week? How can I continue to network? So I think when things do pick up and when the industry starts recruiting at the levels it was pre-COVID, a lot of it will be down to who you know and also what you've learned during this period.
Fantastic.
So can I just add to that? I was going to say, you know, a really good point on the webinars, and I think who you know is a big part of it, but also what you know in the industry, who's bought out who's growing, who's expanding. Because if you think about hospitality, it's not just operational roles. You've got IT, you've got asset management, you've got accounting, you've got development. And these are all areas that are positions that you can have in other industries as well. So, you know, it's information, it's real estate. There's so much out there. And like Jessica said, take advantage now, because when you're working in a hotel, you won't have the chance to do it, especially in the early years. So use your time wisely.
Yeah.
And in terms of expanding kind of your network so that you know more people, you get to know the kind of more influential people who may be able to help your career, if not now, then maybe a little bit later on. How would you suggest for students to actually do that?
Start on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is such a great tool for students and also for the industry. I mean, I learn more just logging onto LinkedIn in the morning than I do from a lot of other sources. So, you know, Andrea was right in terms of who might be recruiting, who's doing a certain promotion, who's been bought out, who's reopened, who perhaps isn't reopening. All that knowledge is king, and it would be really beneficial for you to have. So in addition to you being able to connect with relevant people, you're also able to build your network and to actually keep in touch with what's happening in the industry. So that would always be my go-to.
Yeah, absolutely. And follow people who you find are inspiration. You know, it's I think some candidates or graduates might be a bit intimidated by it, but it's like any other social media. Follow who you like, and learn, and through them you will learn. And when we are allowed to go back into face-to-face conferences and meetings, you can meet these people, and they will be so proud that, you know, they've been able to inspire people, the younger generation in hospitality, people who are sort of in the latter years of their careers, and longtime leaders. I won't mention some of their names, but, you know, they love this industry, and they would be so excited to have a youngster come up and say, I've been following you on LinkedIn. I love what you do. You know, can we have a coffee? They would love it. And those are the guys that can introduce you and help you along your way as well.
Definitely. It's also when you do get down the track and when you do get to that interview stage, it's the most flattering thing an interviewer can hear, that, you know, you follow them on LinkedIn, you enjoy the content that they share, you've learned about the company. I mean, when you do get to the point to be interviewing for roles, you know, as much as you can Google the hotel or Google the restaurant, there's nothing better than knowing firsthand what it is like to work somewhere, and you will gain that from connecting with the relevant people on LinkedIn. So as Andrea said, please don't worry about following someone really senior. Don't worry about connecting with someone. My biggest tip on LinkedIn is, if you're going to add someone as a connection, drop them a note as to why.
Definitely. Yeah.
I do it myself, and a lot of people would get a lot of requests to connect or to follow on LinkedIn, and I love it when I get like a little note from someone say, I've just graduated from the industry, I'd love to do some of the roles that you've done, or I like what your company has done, I'd love to connect. And I'm 10 times more likely to accept that connection than a blind invite from someone who I don't know. They perhaps don't have their profile up to date in terms of where they're studying, what internships they've done, any work experience they've had. So definitely get your LinkedIn profile up to date. And then when you are adding people as a connection, particularly if they are more senior, and then drop them a little note as to why.
And let's make it personal. We're in the industry that is about being, you know, it's a personal thing, and I think also they're more likely to remember you if you've written a note. I stayed at your hotel last night, really loved it. You know, I'm graduating next year. You know, can we have a chat? Just something simple. We don't need to see the whole CV, a huge long cover letter. Just a couple little, you know, bullet points, and you're more likely to get a response. We lost you.
You still there?
Hello.
Oh, you're there. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm having a bit of internet problems. This seems to be the lockdown flavour of the month, I think, having broadband problems. Hopefully it's not you two.
Carry on
huge.
talking.
Well, I was going to say, because we mentioned about LinkedIn, and you also mentioned, it's a great kind of window for seeing someone's kind of achievements already there. But a lot of our questions we're getting before the webinar were about CVs and how graduates can get their CVs right. So I just wondered, from your perspective, firstly, to avoid, and then kind of secondly, the things that they just have to do. In order. Jessica, do you want to kick us off with that?
Yeah, happy to. I see a lot of CVs during busy times for the business. We'll receive 700 to 1,000 CVs a week. So I have to be honest. I don't have the time to spend a huge amount of time on every CV. So I am really looking for the key points on the CV. If we're starting with what not to do, I cannot tell you how much of a bugbear it is when I have an absolutely amazing CV and I can't find the contact details. I know that seems really simple and straightforward, and you're probably sitting there thinking, well, obviously I've got my details on my CV. It's amazing how often that is just slipped and it's just missed off the CV. So in terms of contact details, have them really clear, have them on the top of your CV, not on the bottom of the third page in a different font and hard to read. Make it really clear and accessible, because if I've got an amazing CV in front of me, I want to call them then and there, and I will call them then and there. So make sure they're on there and make sure they're accurate. The other bugbears I'd probably have about CVs is when people leave off information that perhaps they don't feel is relevant, but actually is definitely relevant to the role that they're applying for. When I am looking at a CV, one of the things I'm looking for is commitment, your commitment to a company or the industry or a specific role. And what a lot of people tend to do is in early roles, when they're promoted, and even if that promotion might be from a barback to a bartender, they'll leave off the barback because they don't feel that it's relevant to the role that they're applying for. When in actual fact, I'm looking for progression. I'd like to see that a company, you've done really well in a company and they've responded to that and they've promoted you. I'd also really like to see the fact that you have committed to a longer period with a company. But it also shows, I think for at the top level, that shows that you've done really well in a job and that commitment that you've shown has been rewarded with a promotion. In terms of what I love to see in a CV, I love to see a nice compact CV, particularly when it's for a more entry-level role or for a graduate that perhaps doesn't have years and years of experience. So I do suggest that you keep it fairly simple in terms of your CV. When you are listing out your relevant work experience, make sure that you do have your current job or your most recent job at the top and work your way backwards, as opposed to starting with your first job and then moving down. That gets a little bit confusing when you're looking at a lot of CVs. But when you are having the work experience, what's really key is to highlight the positives of that work experience, to highlight the achievements that you've had in that job. If it was a waiter or a receptionist, or it was an intern that you had in concierge, those are all great roles and they're really relevant to your CV. But what's not relevant is just outlining every single task that you did in that role. A CV isn't a job description. If you've got down that you're a waiter or you're a receptionist, anyone in the industry will know the tasks that you would be doing in that role, but what they want to know is the achievements. So what are you really proud of? Did you have an amazing mystery guest score? Did you implement something? Were you given an opportunity to do that? Were you employee of the month? Whatever it is, highlight your successes. So those are my tips in a nutshell.
It'll probably be a lot similar to Jess's, but what would be, Andrea, what would be your
tips? Absolutely. I agree with everything she said. I think as well, for me, in a recruitment agency, we want to know what position you're applying for. I think it's key Again, we can get hundreds and hundreds of applications. But if we don't know which role you're applying for, it does slow down the process. And if we're too busy to read through every CV, it's difficult to read a CV and think, okay, what could this person do? Now, that is something that I personally do, especially if it's a younger or recent grad. But I think if you're applying to something that a recruitment agency is advertising, be very clear at the beginning, I'm applying for X role. And just like Jessica said, show progression. I'm sure you didn't start off as the financial controller. You must have, if you've only a couple of years in of your career, and do put things on like hobbies and interests. That's a real thing for me. I don't just want to know your academics. I think, and especially now, after COVID and your early years, is who makes you you, and what is going to help you achieve your goals in an industry and a position that you are interested in. And if you are a big wine and foodie, that I understand more why a financial controller in this restaurant will make you stand out amongst other people. So all those things do help you achieve your goals. So the more information, the better for me at this point, at the beginning stages. And then as your career progresses, you can start to see your path, and you can fine tune it as you go along.
I tend to agree with the hobbies point, Andrea. I think one of the things that, when you're applying for jobs and you'd hear the words, culture. What's the hotel culture like? What's the business culture like? And as much as you guys as job seekers are looking for a place that fits you and suits you and you really want to work, the employers are looking for the same. They're looking for going to gel with the rest of our team and have the same values as us. And you can start to see that, one, from the places that you've worked, because everyone in the industry will tend to know which properties or venues are similar in culture and approach to theirs, but also from your hobbies and your interests and your passion for the industry in particular.
And I just going on one more to that, I think a lot of times as well, people will say, oh, my friend worked there, they didn't like it, or my friend worked there. I can't tell you enough times where I've said to candidates, look, go find out for yourself. What works for your friend doesn't necessarily work for you. And I know we all take advice from our friends and family, but really be in control of your own CV, your own career path. Do not make decisions based on what someone heard or someone said. And that's really key, because it does stop people from going and getting the job that they want. But do your research, but make your own decisions.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I think I've heard the majority of that with my internet connection at the moment. But I think the other question, thanks internet provider for providing me with so-called fast broadband, but it was just about kind of volunteering and experience, because it's going to be really difficult for people to give relevant experience. And I know earlier we said kind of taking more charge of your learning and development would be a great way to do that, and going on webinars, LinkedIn. What kind of advice would you give for graduates now looking to do work experience or volunteering to get a little bit more experience?
I mean, for me, it doesn't have to be in the industry. I mean, there's so many places to volunteer at the moment. I mean, I live on the canal in Limehouse. There's people who clean up the canal. There's people who, look after the wildlife. There's so much, and it doesn't have to be in hospitality, but it just shows that you can work as a team, that you show up when you're supposed to show up. It just that you can take direction. So any work is work experience. It doesn't have to be necessarily hospitality. And I think that's something that candidates of all levels should remember. What do you think, Jessica?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, at the moment, with a lot of hotels, restaurants, contract caterers closed, or at least the majority of their services closed, the number of opportunities to get your foot in the door, even on an internship or work experience basis, will be reduced, unfortunately. But don't let that stop you from taking up those volunteering opportunities and anything else that comes about in a different industry. You will learn transferable skills that hospitality will value, regardless of the industry that you're doing it in. We've talked, I actually attended a webinar a few weeks ago, and the topic of conversation was essentially interviewing post-COVID-19 and what the changes will be for both the person doing the interview and also the person attending the interview. And one of the common themes throughout this was the additional questions about what you did during COVID-19. So both me as an employer will be asked by people, how did you treat your employees during COVID-19? What were your processes and practices? How did you go about reopening? And that's fair. And I think those are really valid questions, because when you are moving into the industry, you're going to want to make sure you're working for a good employer. So please do ask those questions. But likewise, we will be asking candidates, what did you do during COVID-19? Did you take up any of those learning opportunities that were often free? A lot of companies are offering free training. Did you take up any of the volunteering opportunities for, all the charities that are currently missing out on fundraising because of the added pressures and the shift to obviously supporting the health service?
Brilliant.
You look like you're back now.
I'm back. You can see you're in focus.
That's all right. Fantastic. Well, I was just going to say the kind of final question that we've had before the webinar that I thought was really interesting was looking at kind of reasons why obviously hospitality has taken a bit of a beating, to be honest, over this COVID time and having to close and then reopening now. But what would you say to people who are maybe considering kind of careers in hospitality? Why should people, do you think, choose hospitality as part of their career?
I'm happy to take that one first, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course, go ahead. Yeah.
I honestly think that this whole process has made me want to work in hospitality even more. I think as an industry, we've done some absolutely incredible things, not just for our employees and our team members, but for our local communities, and also, supporting hospitals and other charities with donations and food supplies and cooking and deliveries. And I think some of the stories that are coming out of our hotels and other hotels are absolutely inspirational. And that's certainly not... It hasn't worried me about the future of hospitality. In fact, it's probably given me more confidence in hospitality as an employer of the future. I think one of the things that is a common thread, is a common personality trait across hospitality is everyone's desire to get stuck in and help. And you're there for the greater good, essentially. You're there to make people have an amazing experience. And for the last 4 months, we haven't had guests. So we've been trying to make amazing experiences for our community and for charities and for our team members. And so I think that's given me real faith in the industry as a whole. And as I said before, hospitality is incredibly resilient. We will bounce back from this, and more than likely we'll bounce back stronger. I think there will be changes, and I think we should be ready to embrace some of those changes, because I think that some of them could be a good wake-up call for the industry. I think we'll see more flexibility from employers' perspectives, as well as a number of other initiatives that will make hospitality more appealing as a place to work.
Andrea, have you got anything you'd like to add?
Just to add to that, I mean, if you've chosen hospitality, or hospitality is in your blood, you're going to stick with it because that's what you're passionate about. There's no point. Work is hard enough, and if you don't love it, then you're not going to get up every day and go. And I think, if you've chosen hospitality, or it's chosen you, you stick with it, and you'll be better at it. If you love what you're doing, your heart and soul will be in it. And just saying what Jessica said, it just shows, okay, the hotel is closed, but they went out and did all these things, and did charity and did food runs and all the other things that a lot of these hotel staff are done, which is not hospitality in their job description. But so it doesn't mean because you've chosen hotels that that's what you're stuck in. There's so many other areas that the industry prepares you for. So if you do decide to move into another area, your skills are so transferable. And I think that's why we keep saying, be flexible. If it's not in your job description, still, ask to do it, take on other tasks, because all it's doing is helping you be a better worker and a better employee.
Mm.
What a great place to kind of end that. I'm definitely feeling more pumped about the industry after hearing both of you. Just thank you both so much for this. I hope it's been really useful for everyone watching, either live or the recorded version. But yeah, a massive thank you to both of you taking time out of your day to share your experience with the future talent, really. Thank you very much for those watching at home. This has been part of the GEMS webinar series. It's our first one. We've got more to come. Our next one is on Thursday, the 23rd, looking at the whole tourism industry as a whole responding to COVID. So be sure to tune in for that. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.